joining us for our Made at Home series with the University of Georgia Family and Consumer Sciences agents from across the state. My name is Christina Garner, and I'm the Stewart County Family and Consumer Sciences agent. Today, I'm going to be joining Becca Stackhouse and Candace Tucker to bring you some research-based nutritional information and recipes about fruits and vegetables that are currently in season. Today, we're going to start off with some basic nutritional information about kale, followed by Candace, who will dive a little deeper into the nutritional information, and end with Becca sharing a delicious kale recipe. To start with, just to talk about some basic nutrition when we talk about kale, kale is a nutrient-packed vegetable. It's rich in vitamins A, C, K, and B6. It also has significant amounts of potassium, calcium, and iron. It's also a great source of dietary fiber and has minimal amounts of calories and sodium. Continuing on with some of the nutrition benefits of kale, the vitamin A is important for healthy skin, vision, reproduction, and your immune system. The vitamin A is a powerful antioxidant that supports immune health. And the vitamin K is vital for blood to clot normally and helping the body heal from injury. Some fun facts about kale. It is a part of the cabbage family. It's actually closest to wild cabbage. It's very similar to collards. The difference is that kale has uneven leaf edges and is a little less heat tolerant. So we do have a hard time sometimes with kale in South Georgia. But as you can see there in the picture, you can see some of the different outlines of collards, some chard, mustard greens, and then a couple different types of kale. There's many different varieties of kale. There's actually over 50 varieties that come in many different shapes, textures, colors, and some even have different tastes. So that's just kind of some of the basics about kale. Now I'm going to turn it over to Candace, and she's going to dive a little bit deeper into the nutritional information.
Thank you, Christina, and hello, everyone. My name is Candace Tucker, and I am the Family and Consumer Sciences agent in Coweta County. If you are a diabetic, you may be wondering, how do fruits and vegetables affect your diabetes? Well, the good news is that all fruits and vegetables are good for you in moderation. So this week, let's take a look at kale. Kale is packed with fiber, antioxidants, calcium, vitamin C and K, iron, and a wide range of other nutrients that can help prevent various health problems. Antioxidants help your body remove those unwanted toxins that result from natural processes and environmental pressures. These toxins are known as free radicals, and they basically are unstable molecules. If too many build up in your body, they can lead to cell damage. And this may result in health problems such as inflammation and diseases. High blood sugar levels can trigger the production of free radicals, and antioxidants such as vitamin C and alpha-linolenic acid can help reduce complications that may occur with diabetes. And both of these antioxidants are present in kale. So now I am going to hand it over to Becca, who is going to demonstrate a delicious recipe using kale.
Thanks, Candace and Christina. So I'm actually not doing your food demo today. We have a guest doing it. So I'm gonna pass it on over to Josh.
Hey there everybody, Josh Grant, the Ag Agent in Stewart County, Georgia, coming to you to talk about one of my favorite healthy treats, kale chips. Earlier, you just learned about how kale is a very nutritional vegetable to mix into your diet. It is full of fiber and high in vitamin A and C. And it's also a very versatile vegetable that you can use in all kinds of different recipes. You can have it in smoothies if you puree it up. You can, like we're going to talk about today, basically dehydrate it in an oven to make chips. You can saute it up as a side dish. and you can work it into all kinds of different other recipes for either side or main dishes. But it right now is in season, so if you care about eating local, there is plenty of Georgia grown and southeastern United States grown kale being produced right now and harvested. If you do want to make your own kale and grow it in your own garden, you may have missed the opportunity to do it for a fall harvest, but this brassica, being a cold season crop, can also be planted in the late winter time for a spring harvest. So if you have your own garden, you can plant it in February and March, and then you will have it about 50 to 70 days after for a harvest. Same thing for days to maturity. If you were going to have a fall garden, you would plant it in August and September, and then you'd be able to be harvesting it right now, October and November. So with all that said, I just want to hop into this specific recipe that you'll probably see up on the screen sometime for just general kale chips. Really simple recipe. All you really need is the kale itself, an oil, and then seasonings of your choice. And we'll go over a couple of the different options you have for seasonings. Now, kale is available year-round in your grocer, most likely, so you'll be able to prepare kale chips at any point in the season. When you're picking up your kale, make sure that you're picking up some nice crisp leaves. Usually you're seeing these loose in your produce section, just bundled up together. So once you bring the kale home, or if you're harvesting your own kale, you're going to want to wash it off, of course. And then if it's still on the stem, you're going to want to strip the kale from the stem into either bite-sized pieces or larger. I would probably go towards something a little larger than a chip that you would see out of a bag, because once you put these kale in the oven, they're actually going to shrink quite a bit when you start dehydrating them. What we have here is already chopped up kale bits. So these are actually a little smaller than what I would recommend if you were buying whole kale on the stem and you're just stripping the kale vegetation off the stem. This is going to be a little smaller. When you're doing that, when you're stripping it from the stem, you're really just going to try to get as much of the kale foliage off of that main margin stem and then throw the stems away. But once you do that, a lot of the times what I find on those loose kale is that they're being spritzed with water when they're in the produce section, and they're going to have quite a bit of moisture on them. So what you're going to want to do before you actually put the kale in the pan is you're going to want to dry it out. So I'm going to find the amount of kale that you want, get it off of the stem, put it in a bowl, and then take it bit by bit, put it on a clean surface, a clean countertop or a cutting board, and I usually use either a cloth or some paper towels, and I try to pat it down really well, try to get the extra moisture out of the kale. If you end up putting this kale into the oven on a baking sheet with, droplets of water on it, you may end up steaming it, and you don't want that. It may take the cooking process a little longer because you're really just making a sauna in that oven. You want to try to get rid of as much of the moisture as possible. And then once you feel like you have a good amount of kale, you're going to want to spread it out on the baking sheet. Now you can grease the baking sheet if it's not non-stick. If it is non-stick, then you're probably good to go. And if it's not, and you don't grease it, you can also use parchment paper as well. So I usually try to fill the pan to the point where the kale isn't overflowing, but it is overlapping a little bit, because like I said, it will shrink once it starts dehydrating. As you're patting down and you're in this process of getting all the extra moisture off of the kale, you can preheat the oven. It won't take long. I usually cook it at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, but you can either increase or decrease that temperature a little bit slightly depending on your oven. You know your kitchen best. You know how your appliances are going to work, as well as how quickly or slowly you want to dehydrate the kale. So, but I use the general standard of 250 degrees Fahrenheit is usually a pretty good guess. On the recipe that has been shown up on the screen, or will be shown up on the screen, it says to cook for 10 to 15 minutes. That's a pretty good rough estimate. Just keep checking the kale. You'll notice that either it still has moisture in it, and at that point you're going to want to cook it longer, but at one point you'll be able to see that uniformly across your baking sheet, that everything is crispy, it's shrunk down, and it's probably what you would call a chip. So this is what it would look like once it's on the pan. You've already patted it down, you've gotten as much of the moisture out as possible, and then this is where the variation comes into play. You're going to want to drizzle some kind of oil on top of this to help it crisp up once it's in the oven. I would usually stick with either olive oil. I already have some here. I would just slowly drizzle it, try to get it as even as possible. You even are gonna probably wanna fluff it up after to try to get as much coverage of the oil onto the kale as possible. That's also gonna help your seasoning stick to it. You can also use some artisan oils. What we have here is pecan or pecan, which you prefer on how to say it, oil from Oliver Farm, just across the way, just outside of Crist County. So there's all kinds of other different artisan oils that you could also use to substitute for olive oil. Like I said, you're just gonna wanna try to get your coverage as even as possible. And then if you don't mind getting your hands dirty, don't worry, it's gonna go into the oven anyway. You can try to fluff it up to try to get as much coverage of the oil on the kale as possible. And then the last step before it pops into the oven is that you can choose your seasonings. I've got just a basic salt and pepper mix. For sure, the most basic kale chip recipes, you're gonna wanna stick with adding at least some salt. That's gonna give it some pop in addition to kale flavoring. So I just pinch that in there and maybe fluff it up a little bit more to try to get that even. And again, you have to remember everything is going to shrink once it dehydrates here, so the kale is going to get smaller and the amount of your seasoning is going to get a little more concentrated on those leaves, so you don't want too much. And then really, from there, you can mix it up with whatever kind of flavoring you want. You can have garlic powder, which is what I'm spreading now. You can use onion powder, paprika, Italian seasoning, something spicy, maybe something sweet and chili, what have you. I've never tried something completely sweet. I've never tried something like cinnamon and sugar before, so maybe that's an experiment some people can try, and that's basically it. So I just fluff it up once more, make sure everything is even as much as possible, and then from there, pop it in the oven, and like I said, just check it a couple times as you're cooking it. I've already got the oven preheated to 250. I'm just gonna put it on the lower, closest to the element, and there we go. I'm gonna set the timer for 15 and check it once we get there. All right, well, we're actually at 25 minutes now. We've been checking the kale periodically, and at this point, it's pretty much ready to go. So let's take a look. Watch out, it's gonna be steamy when you first open it. Always makes it hard for me to see with my glasses, and there you go. You can hear the crunch, and you're gonna wanna have that crunch uniformly across all of your kale. So these look more like kale bits than kale chips. Like I said before it popped in the oven, probably not gonna work with pre-cut kale in a bag because it's already so small. You're probably gonna want to get the full version of the kale still on the stem as a leafy green, and then size it a little bigger than chips because they shrink so much. But there you go. You've made this cold crop into a nice crunchy side dish for maybe a meal like a hamburger, or you can just pop these like popcorn just for a snack.
Thanks for joining our Made at Home seasonal produce with kale today. Look forward to seeing you at the next episode.